At my mom's birthday, she raised her glass and said, "I'm proud of all my kids except one." Everyone laughed. I smiled, took out a small white envelope, and dropped it into her champagne glass. She screamed when she saw what was inside. The evening was doomed from the start. I walked into the house around 6:30, snow still clinging to my coat, holding her gift like it was made of porcelain, a silk scarf from Italy, wrapped with care. The whole place smelled like vanilla and roasted meat. Somewhere in the background, Christmas music was playing, cheerful, hollow, and completely out of place. Coats hung on the rack near the door, fur, cashmere, designer labels that whispered expensive. Mine looked like a thrift store find in comparison. The guests were already gathered in the living room. My mom, Carol, sat right in the center of the couch in a bright red dress, her earrings glittering like she'd been crowned queen of the evening. My dad, George, sat beside her, quiet and polite, his default setting at events like this. My older sister, Emma, was admiring her perfect manicure and laughing with Aunt Leslie. My younger brother, Lucas, was deep in a loud debate about luxury cars with a few cousins when I stepped in. Emma gave me a quick glance, cold, uninterested. "Oh, you came," she said, like I was a pizza delivery no one remembered ordering. I forced a smile. "Of course," I replied. "Wouldn't miss it." Mom didn't even bother standing up, just waved her hand. "Put the gift over there and find somewhere to sit. Dinner's almost ready." I hung up my coat and placed the small gift box with the others, most of them massive, glossy, branded shopping bags that looked like they belonged in a window display. Everything looked festive, but it felt empty. And not the kind of empty that catches you off guard, the kind you get used to. While the servers passed around champagne, I stepped to the far end of the long table. No one offered me a closer seat. That's when I saw it. Above the fireplace, where the old family portrait used to hang, were two large framed photos, matching expensive frames, hung with care. In one, Emma stood in front of the Eiffel Tower, dressed in an all-white designer outfit, striking a pose that screamed magazine shoot. In the other, Lucas stood proudly in a sleek, modern office, holding a plaque that read Startup of the Year. There was no photo of me. There used to be an old graduation picture, back when I still tried to smile. Now, just empty space, like I'd been quietly erased. I looked away, took a glass of champagne, and didn't say a word. Dinner was served. The food was extravagant. Duck with orange glaze, truffle mashed potatoes, tiny sculpted salads in glass bowls. It all looked beautiful, smelled like money, and tasted like nothing. The conversations revolved around the usual things, other people's success. Emma bragged about her new collection in Paris. Lucas talked about opening his first coffee shop. Aunt Leslie, bless her, went full fan club. "You have such a talented family," she said. Carol, Mom, beamed like she'd raised royalty. Not a single person asked me a thing. Even Dad, who normally tries to play neutral, just nodded at me when I sat down, then forgot I existed. At one point, I mentioned quietly that I'd just moved into a new apartment. Mom didn't even pretend to care. "Emma, did you tell them about Paris?" she said, cutting me off and passing her another glass of champagne. I looked down at my plate and focused on my fork. In this house, I've always been background noise, furniture, a glitch in their perfect design. By the time the toast started, I already knew how the night would end. Dad, half-hearted, to family, health, Aunt Leslie, to our children's success. Lucas, half-joking, to the burden of being a genius. Laughter. And then Mom stood up. The room quieted, glasses clinked. She adjusted the silk scarf on her shoulder and looked around with pride. "I'm proud of my children," she said loud. "Proud of Emma, our shining star. Proud of Lucas, so bright and kind." She paused for effect. I held my breath. Then she smiled. "I'm proud of all my children except one." Laughter rippled through the room. Nervous, forced, a few stifled chuckles. Dad smiled into his plate. Emma covered her mouth like she was embarrassed. She wasn't. Lucas raised his glass toward me, smirking. I didn't cry, didn't hunch or shrink, but something inside me finally, quietly, clicked shut, like a door that had been waiting years to close. I stood, picked up my purse, and took out the envelope. Walked over to Mom. Her glass was already on the table. She wasn't even looking. I lifted it gently and slid the envelope into the bottom of the flute, a neat little rectangle visible through the glass. Inside was a short note and a link to a shared drive. "What's this?" she frowned. I didn't answer, just gave a small smile and walked toward the door. "Nora!" Aunt Leslie called after me. "Where are you going?" I didn't respond, just grabbed my coat and left. Outside, the sky was already dark. The snow fell in soft, lazy flakes, glittering under the street lamp like scattered diamonds. I took a deep breath of cold air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt it. I'm not losing a family. They already lost me. I shut the heavy front door behind me and stepped into the cold hallway. Then I stopped. The silence inside the house was so sharp, it felt like it rang in my ears. That kind of silence where your body instinctively holds its breath, like the world is bracing for something. I took one step, then another. Each footfall echoed a little too loudly in my chest. And then, from somewhere deep in the living room, came my mother's scream. Not angry, panicked, high-pitched. I froze, and in that instant, I knew. They opened the envelope. They saw everything. I didn't turn around, didn't run back to explain. I just kept walking toward my car, parked at the edge of the long driveway. The air stung my skin. The snow crunched softly beneath my boots, but inside I felt calm, cold, steady calm. I got in, shut the door, turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. Headlights cut through the snow like blades. And just as I pulled onto the empty street, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Her name lit up the screen with that soft, familiar glow. I glanced at it for half a second, then turned the phone face down. 3 seconds later, buzz again. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Buzz, Lucas. Then came the text from Emma. "You need to explain. How could you do this to us?" No expression on my face, just silence. I flicked the phone to silent, let the vibrations fade into nothing, and kept driving forward, through the snowstorm, through the night, through every guilt trip they'd ever fed me. The pressure to stay quiet, to be the peacemaker, to forgive without reason. Because now I understood. What they really wanted wasn't peace. It was silence. And I wasn't giving them that anymore. I started thinking about how it all began. From the start, I was the extra, the placeholder between the golden children. Emma, the oldest, family pride and joy, a star. Lucas, the youngest, bright, charming, endlessly adored. Me, the space between them, the backdrop. Mom used to say, "You're so independent, so easy." Easy meant invisible. When I won awards, I got a silent nod. When I moved into my first apartment, a smiley face in the family group chat. That's it. When I asked for help, "You're strong, you'll manage." So I managed, worked, paid rent, covered bills I couldn't afford, sent money to help them out, even when I was barely scraping by, quietly hoping, naively, that maybe one day they'd see me, that it would matter. But the truth was different. When Emma had an art show, they bought her gowns that cost more than my rent. When Lucas dropped out of yet another program, Mom took him out for mental health lunches at 5-star restaurants. Me. When I asked for a small loan to get a root canal, Dad sighed and said, "Times are tough. We just can't afford that right now." Meanwhile, they were shopping for Emma's new car. It might have stayed buried if not for one slip, a passing comment from Mrs. Burton. "Such a shame they sold that house near the park. Your grandfather was so proud. He left it to you." That stopped me cold. What house left to me? I didn't believe it at first. So I dug. Property records, tax filings, old estate paperwork, city archives, and there was a will, clearly naming me as the heir to the house. Forged authorizations signed behind my back. Bank records showing years of rental income going straight to my parents' accounts. Thousands and thousands of dollars, while I rationed groceries and worried about rent. I sat with it for a long time. Do I tell them? Walk away quietly? Take them to court? But the decision came the night Mom lifted her glass and said, "I'm proud of all my kids except one," and everyone laughed. Emma smirked. Lucas raised his glass at me, like it was some kind of inside joke. That's when I knew. There would be no apology, no admission, no closure. Just them and their story, where I was the problem. And now, driving through the dark, phone buzzing in the seat beside me, I knew one thing for sure. I did the right thing. It chose me safe, and I would never let them choose for me again. I woke up the next morning to silence. The phone had finally stopped buzzing. When I opened my eyes, the screen was lit up like a Christmas tree. 53 missed calls, 27 texts, 11 voice messages. Emma, Lucas, even Aunt Karen, who I hadn't heard from in 10 years, suddenly remembered I existed. I scrolled through the messages with one finger. Some were desperate. "Sweetheart, we can fix this. We're family." Some were threatening. "If you go public with this, you'll destroy all of us." And a few were just plain nasty. Typical. "You've always been ungrateful." I set the phone down. Didn't answer a single one. By lunchtime, another message came in. This time an email from my father. Short. "Be reasonable. You don't want a war. No one wins." Signed, "Family is everything." His go-to phrase whenever he wanted to sweep something under the rug. Later that evening, another message from Mom. "I'm sorry if we hurt you, but since you've clearly found out, maybe we should talk. We're open to discussing compensation." Compensation. Not. "We want to make things right." Not, "We betrayed you and we're sorry." Just compensation, like I was some disgruntled vendor and not their daughter. I closed the email, turned off my phone. 2 days later, the rumors started. First, a college friend reached out. "Your mom told people you turned down the inheritance because you were focused on your career." Then, a neighbor sent me a screenshot from Emma's Facebook. Sometimes jealousy ruins even the strongest bonds. It's sad to see how greed changes people. And that's when I realized they'd launched a full-blown campaign. The goal was simple: discredit me so that if the truth ever came out, people would already be doubting my side. It was textbook. First, silence me. Then, ruin my reputation. Then, play the victims. So I spent the entire next day in a lawyer's office. Her name was Miss Bennett. Sharp, no nonsense, mid-40s, with eyes that didn't miss a thing. When I laid everything out, the will, the documents, the tax records, she didn't flinch, just nodded. "You have a rock-solid case. The house is legally yours. They've been collecting income they had no right to." I hesitated. "What about the lies, the posts, the gossip?" She frowned. "Unless they cause you measurable harm, like loss of income, it's hard to prove defamation. But if they keep it up, we can build a case. You'd be surprised what counts once there's a pattern." I nodded. Her confidence was exactly what I needed. "So what do I do now?" "First, document everything. Screenshots, messages, emails, every single piece. Second, keep everything formal. Third, no more private communication. All contact goes through me." On the drive home, one thing became clear. They weren't going to stop. To them, the truth was dangerous, and I was the traitor who'd chosen herself over their script. But I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't the old Nora who quietly cleared dishes while everyone toasted Emma. I knew exactly what their family values were worth, and I knew what I was worth now too. That night, I opened my laptop, wrote a new email, attached the scanned copy of the will, attached all relevant documents confirming my legal ownership, and sent it to Mom, Dad, Emma, and Lucas. Subject line: formal notice of property ownership. All further communication through legal counsel. No emojis, no explanations, no begging, just facts. They wanted a war, but they forgot one thing. I'm not their background character anymore. The letter Miss Bennett sent on my behalf was about as warm as a blizzard. 2 pages, 0 pleasantries, and each sentence landed like a warning shot. It laid everything out. The house legally belonged to me, and my parents had collected rent on it for years, while forging my signature behind my back. They had 5 business days to respond, or we'd file a civil suit for restitution and damages, and forward evidence of fraud to the district attorney. It should have felt like a victory, but it was far from over. This was just the opening move. I spent the next 3 days waiting for the sky to fall. The first, nothing. Just silence. No angry texts, no late-night calls, not even a passive-aggressive meme from Emma, which frankly was suspicious. Then it started, not with a bang, but with a seal. A sleek white envelope slid through my mail slot. No return address, just my name in perfect printed serif. Inside, a revised agreement from a law firm I'd never heard of. The header made me squint. Whitmore Law. The letter was condescendingly cordial. I was encouraged to resolve this unfortunate conflict privately and avoid unnecessary emotional distress by signing a mutual agreement. It sounded reasonable. if you didn't actually read it. The fine print. I'd be surrendering all claims to the property, forfeiting any right to sue, and agreeing never to discuss it publicly. In exchange, a payout that wouldn't even cover 2 years of rent in this city. Oh, and I'd have to sign a lifetime non-disclosure agreement. Classic corporate strategy. Pay the problem to shut up. I didn't even bother forwarding it to Miss Bennet, just tossed it onto the kitchen counter and laughed. Dry, tired, bitter. The next day, another envelope. Same white paper. Same we can resolve this like adults tone. Different terms. Slightly higher payout and a new clause. I'd also have to sign a statement retracting any prior defamatory implications regarding the Hale family's financial conduct. In plain English, they wanted me to say I lied. I started keeping the envelopes in a drawer. I didn't read most of them. I just watched the pile grow. And then I noticed the car. It showed up on Thursday. Black sedan, tinted windows, parked across the street and facing my apartment. Could have been anyone, a neighbor, a delivery guy, a random car, but it was there again on Friday and Saturday. Same model, same spot, lights off, engine silent. I started checking the locks twice, then 3 times. And just when I was starting to think maybe I was imagining things, maybe the stress was getting to me, there was a knock at the door. It was 9:47 p.m. I checked the peephole. 2 men, suits, one holding a clipboard, the other just standing there, hands in his coat pockets. I didn't open the door. "Miss Hale," one of them called out. "We just need a quick signature on something for clarification." "Clarification? Sure. I'm not signing anything," I said through the door. Of course, he chuckled like we were old friends. "No pressure. Just easier if we handle this quickly." I said nothing. After a moment, footsteps retreated. When I opened the door a crack a few minutes later, they were gone. But a folder had been slid onto my welcome mat. Inside, in thick black letters, "This can end now if you sign." That night I called Miss Bennet. My voice shook for the first time since this started. She didn't panic. She just said, "Pack a bag. Go stay with someone. Do not go home tonight." I grabbed my essentials, laptop, documents, the envelope pile, and booked it to Christina's. Her apartment was barely bigger than my old dorm room. The couch had a sinkhole in the middle, and her dog immediately took over my blanket. It was the safest I'd felt in weeks. I broke down for a full minute. No words, just that silent, gut-deep kind of crying that doesn't need sound to hurt. "They're acting like I'm dangerous," I finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "Like I'm a threat." Christina didn't miss a beat. "No, they're acting like you have power. That's new for them." She made tea. I couldn't drink it, but I held the mug just to feel something warm. 2 days later, while I was still camped on her couch, Miss Bennet called, with a different tone, tighter, sharper. "I found something," she said. Turns out Cal Whitmore, yes, that Cal, had advised my family from the very beginning to suppress the will. Worse, one of his junior associates had leaked a thread of internal emails that proved he knew the POA forms were forged. Cal didn't just take on the case. He orchestrated the whole campaign. Miss Bennet filed a complaint with the state bar before lunch. By dinner, we'd forwarded the new documents to the district attorney's office. And just like that, the air changed. Suddenly, the silence wasn't mine. It was theirs. No more letters, no more cars. Nora Hale had stopped playing defense. We didn't announce anything publicly. No posts, no leaks, no threats. We just prepared for trial. And that's when they made one last attempt to buy me off. Another envelope, this one delivered by courier. Inside, a 6-figure offer, a pre-written apology, and a full release clause. All I had to do was sign and pretend none of it ever happened. I stared at the paper for a long time, thought about the years I spent scraping by, while they collected rent off a property I didn't know I still owned. I thought about every holiday dinner where my chair was optional, every text left unread, every time I got, "We can't help right now," while Lucas got another gift-wrapped safety net. Then I thought about the knock at my door, the folder, and I set the offer on fire, literally. Christina's sink had scorch marks for a week. Worth it. The next morning, the DA's office called. "We're moving forward with criminal charges," the woman said. "Forgery, fraud, possibly identity theft. We'll need you to confirm some signatures in court." I said yes. I didn't even flinch. They say courtrooms are where the truth comes out. That's generous. Courtrooms are where truth shows up wearing a blazer, sits stiff in a chair, and hopes someone believes her before she runs out of time. Here's section 4 of the rewritten story with punctuation added, continuing exactly where we left off. The day of the trial, I wore navy. Not black, too grim. Not gray, too apologetic. Navy said, "I'm not here to mourn. I'm here to be heard." Cal Whitmore was already at the plaintiff's table when I walked in. Expensive haircut, gold watch, perfectly folded pocket square, like he was auditioning for a legal drama where no one ever loses. He didn't look at me. Mom did, just briefly. She was sitting beside Dad, who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Emma wasn't there. Lucas was. His expression said, "I didn't sign up for this," which was funny, considering he actually had signed things illegally. I sat beside Miss Bennett, who passed me a folder and whispered, "Stay calm. Let the evidence speak first." She had a highlighter behind one ear and a gleam in her eye that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this. The opening statements were polite knives. Cal stood and painted me as a once estranged family member, suddenly interested in her late grandfather's estate, a woman possibly confused by grief and motivated by spite. I didn't flinch. I just thought, he's good, not truthful, but good. Then Miss Bennett stood. She didn't raise her voice, didn't pace. She just let the facts land one by one, the will clearly naming me as the sole heir to the property, the forged power of attorney documents, years of rent flowing into accounts I didn't know existed, the sudden smear campaign once I questioned it. She ended with, "This isn't about family tension, it's about theft," and sat down. Testimonies followed. The handwriting expert explained how my signature had been digitally copied and pasted onto rental agreements. Then came the surprise. Mrs. Burton. Yes, that Mrs. Burton. The chatty neighbor whose slip-up started this whole thing. She testified that my grandfather had often talked about the house being for Nora. Not for the kids, not for the family, for me. She even brought a Christmas card from him, addressed to me, with the line, "Hope this house brings you peace one day." Cal tried to shake her. "Isn't it possible you misunderstood?" Mrs. Burton smiled. "I misunderstand a lot of things at my age, sir. That wasn't one of them." There was a beat of silence. Even the stenographer looked impressed. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I told them I hadn't known the house was still in my name, that I'd spent years believing it had been sold, that I'd worked, struggled, and stayed quiet until I couldn't anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just told the truth, like it was math. The judge took a recess, and when he came back, he looked tired but resolute. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Nora Hale. Full ownership of the property is restored to her. The defendants are ordered to repay all rental income collected over the past 3 years, with interest. Attorney fees to be paid by the defendants. I didn't smile, not yet. I just let it wash over me, like a storm finally breaking after years of waiting for thunder. Cal asked to speak privately. Denied. Dad muttered something. I didn't hear it. Lucas looked at the floor like it owed him something. But Miss Bennett turned to me and said quietly, "This isn't over, but it's yours now." 2 weeks later, the DA filed criminal charges. Dad, forgery, real estate fraud, and identity theft. Emma wasn't charged, but a formal defamation complaint was accepted. And Cal Whitmore? Turns out encouraging clients to suppress a valid will and falsify POA documents isn't great for your license. His name popped up in a bar ethics review. His firm dropped my parents 2 days later. That part wasn't public, but word got around. Emma's sponsorships started evaporating. Quietly, politely, like people stepping away from a fire before it spreads. Mom lost her part-time job when a local blog picked up the story. Apparently, customers didn't love being helped by a woman accused of defrauding her daughter. Dad took some sort of warehouse job out of town. Lucas tried to go back to school, but no one's paying his tuition this time. Me, I moved into the house, not with fanfare, just with a key that finally belonged to me. The mailbox now reads Nora Hale. One evening, I hung a photo on the hallway wall. It's not dramatic, just a candid someone took years ago. Me, mid-laugh, blurry around the edges. It's not perfect, but it's mine. Michael helped hang it. He didn't ask about the court. He just made sure it was straight, kissed my shoulder, and said, "Want help with the garden next weekend?" There's a ring in his pocket. I know it. He knows I know it. We're not rushing. Christina visits often. She brings pie that always burns a little. Sam drinks juice from a cereal bowl because he forgets glasses exist. Laura brings her dog, who's somehow gotten bolder about stealing food. It's chaotic, loud, beautiful. It's family, the kind that doesn't ask you to shrink. Sometimes people ask if I regret not settling, not just taking the money and walking away. And I always say no, because the truth wasn't for them, it was for me. They lost their daughter long before the courtroom. I just made it official. So, what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was I justified in taking it to court, or should I have just let it go for the sake of family? I'm still figuring out how to feel about all of it. But one thing I know for sure, silence protects the wrong people. You made it this far. Thank you, seriously. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe.